Icicle Golem boss battle guide for Mario and Rabbids Kingdom battles. So I'd highly recommend taking Rabbid Peach in addition to, well, I guess that's the only real choice you have for this fight. So you're forced to use Peach, and obviously you're forced to use Mario. And right off the bat, this is, I would say this is the longest of all the boss battles in the game. At least your first time through, as you're just playing through the campaign organically. And this is also the most difficult boss fight to get a perfect rating on your first attempt. So if you don't get it here, which I did not, don't stress it, just plan on going back. I ended up, so you have 10 turns to beat this boss, all 3 stages of this boss, to get a perfect rating. And the biggest challenge is how much of this environment is destructible and how far you have to actually move to get to like the 3rd stage of the boss. So the first stage, he kind of chases you down when he's got this big shield that you can't so that you can't attack directly in front of him. On the 2nd and 3rd stage, he does not have the shield, so it's a little bit easier, but on the 3rd stage, he moves to the far side of the arena. And you've probably already done a whole lot of fighting on the sides of the arena, and all of the cover is probably destroyed at this point. So it makes it very challenging to get to get close enough to him to actually do damage in the 3rd stage without getting pushed back and without taking too much damage, because if you leave your character completely, or any of your characters completely exposed, they're going to take a good amount of damage. So the reason I like using Rabbid Peach for this fight, obviously her defensive capabilities, her blaster has pretty good range, and then her RC toy car actually is excellent for damaging the first stage of the fight, and the same thing with Peach's grenade duck ability, the grenade, that both of those special attacks, I guess you can call them, the ones that have the cooldown on them, they can attack, or they can damage the first stage of this boss behind the shield, I guess is the best way to put it. You can damage the boss when the shield, like when he still has the shield and he's facing you. So yeah, there'll be a lot of opportunities, like right now, where, I mean, even though I moved and I got that first attack in, and it looks like the amount that the boss can cover on this first stage with that shield is pretty huge. Mario's trigger ability, I guess, his overwatch ability, his hero sight, I think is what it's actually called. I still think of it as overwatch because that's what it's called in XCOM, that will damage the boss anytime that he moves, even if the shield is actually facing out. So if you're having trouble, and I'm not sure exactly what the mechanics are for which character is saved. So the cutscene obviously kind of introduced, or the cutscene introducing this boss also introduces Peach, and you're forced to use Peach for this fight. And if you have 2 additional Rabbids selected in addition to Mario, I don't know what the selection mechanics are for which partner gets kicked out and which partner stays. But what you can do is just choose Luigi and a Rabbid as your other partners going into the fight, and then Luigi will get replaced by Peach, and whichever 3rd character you want, whichever 3rd character you've chosen, will be the one chosen, or will be the one that remains after Peach kicks out Luigi. So we've taken out the first fight. Now the boss is going to start stomping people and kind of changing his mechanics a little bit. So unlike the first boss fight, Rabbid Kong, where the mechanics didn't really change from phase to phase, the mechanics do change here for each stage of the boss fight. And I mentioned this on the Rabbid Kong boss fight as well, but it's worth mentioning again. Every stage of this boss fight, and I think every boss fight actually, respawns a couple new enemies. Always focus down those additional enemies and kill them as quickly as you can before focusing on the boss. Now, obviously, there will be situations where you just don't have the range, and then maybe the boss is the only thing you actually can attack, but when you can focus down and shoot the ads, like, get them first. It's very important, because if you leave them alive and then you shoot and you knock the boss from the second to the third, and there's still additional enemies, there'll be even more enemies that spawn on the third stage, which makes it incredibly difficult. So as you saw here with Peach, I used I used her Hero Gaze Overwatch ability to first, before attacking the Thwomper, I believe is his name, the guy that reacts and charges you after he takes weapon damage, use her Overwatch ability and then shoot him, because Peach will get a second shot on him when he starts moving after reacting to the first shot. So it's a really good way to direct where that Overwatch damage is going, because if you use that Overwatch ability and then you just wait for the turn to play out, Peach could attack the boss, or she could attack the person that you want, or she could attack nothing. Those enemies could run some other direction. You really have no control over it. But when you attack that enemy and force him to attack Peach, and then she will then use that Overwatch ability, it gives you much more control over how that skill is actually used. So it's a much more effective skill when you do it that way. When you plan on using it mid-turn versus at the end of the turn. Also, an important nuance with Rabbid Peach's go-kart ability, or I keep calling it go-kart, like RC car ability. If you use it and it doesn't make it all the way to an enemy on the turn that you use it, and then, like, let's say, like it did here on that last turn, the movement of the enemy actually triggered the radius of the explosion, or triggered the proximity detection of the ability. The enemy then still gets their reaction move. So it's not like you get to skip, unfortunately, it's not like you get to skip out on the reaction from that weapon attack by having it take an extra turn to get there. The enemy still knows who used that attack, and then reacts accordingly. So Mario's taking a bit of damage here. So I know that I'm gonna be. Oh, I should have used the M power there. I had his attack boost ability, but I didn't use it. That was not smart. So I'm also, because I see that Mario is so low on health, I am attempting to get Rabbid Peach over closer to Mario to heal him up a bit. And I know that on the next turn I'll be able to get him, and I'm just kind of hoping that the boss here attacks. Well, because I had Peach's shield ability, I knew that Mario would not die on that turn, because the majority of the damage done to Mario would get reflected onto Peach, and she had quite a bit of health. So I guess this is the one exception to my rule here. Focusing down all the additional enemies is not always the exact perfect strategy. It's a good rule of thumb, but it is not the guaranteed strategy to victory. And being able to use the full range of motion of, or knowing how to use the full range of motion after using slide attacks or jump attacks or whatever is very important. Also, I made a mistake in the positioning of my characters here for this stage of the boss fight, because I know that In the third stage of the boss fight, he's going to run to the far side of this arena, like I mentioned before, and it's going to be very difficult for me to move my characters into position to actually take him out. So I'm moving away from where I know he's going to be, just because I know I need to get Mario healed a little bit, and that actually I think is what cost me getting the perfect rating on my first attempt here, due to poor planning and poor positioning. So yeah, we're going to jump off Mario, give him a little bit of extra healing, get him as high as we can, and then blast him with the shotgun, and do all the damage we can. And I used the M power at the wrong time there, because if I had used the M power after I had moved Mario and after I had moved Peach, I would have been able to get his damage boost onto Rabbid Peach as well. I mean, there's so many little things you can do to just slightly give yourself that extra edge, and that's one of the things that I love about this game and that I love about XCOM, is that there are so many nuances, so many strategic decisions you can make with every single move within every single turn, and that is what kind of keeps me endlessly fascinated with this game, and what also makes me wish that there was some sort of enemy scaling, because when you replay this boss fight, if you didn't get the perfect rating like I did not here, if you go to the end of the game, have all the characters, have Yoshi and maxed out abilities and all that kind of stuff, this boss ends up being a freaking cakewalk. And I wish that there was some sort of scaling when you replay this, or some, maybe not necessarily scaling just to just like every time you replay it, but there was some sort of challenge mode to replay the bosses and the mid bosses scaled to like a hard difficulty or max difficulty or something along those lines. So I don't know why I used the grenade duck there instead of the shotgun. I think because the shotgun would have destroyed that ice block and would have frozen Peach and Mario and prevented them from using their special abilities on the next turn. This boss fight is about the time in the game where I would recommend actually getting some of those, some of the upgrades that, well, very specifically the upgrade that clears special status effects from teammates when jumping off of them, when vaulting off of them, because before this, there are some enemies that have status effects, or that can apply status effects to your team. But up until this boss fight, it never becomes such a recurring problem that you actually need to spend your power orbs upgrading your characters to specifically deal with that issue. So it's also worth noting that another reason that I love Rabbid Peach for this fight is that if you keep Rabbid Peach's range far enough away from the boss that that the RC card does not hit him on, like, as it's cast, it will actually tank quite a bit of damage for your team, for what's basically an inanimate object that doesn't matter if it gets knocked out. And it does a good amount of damage, so you don't want to waste it necessarily, but it's an excellent, I guess, defensive buff to use, almost unintentionally. I mean, Rabbid Peach is so strong. I think I prefer Rabbid Peach over Peach as a healer late game, because she has that RC card that can do such great range damage and can tank extra attacks. Unlike Peach, which just has the grenade duck, has very limited range with the shotgun. And with her shotgun, unless you position her perfectly, which is not always possible, she can do quite a bit of team damage and friendly fire damage which makes her even less viable. I mean, like, it's easy to say, oh, it's not hard to position her into a place where she's not going to attack your own teammates, but that's not always the case. Cover gets destroyed. Every map is different. It's just not. It's not as easy as saying, oh, put her in a position where she's not gonna shoot your teammates. It's much more challenging than that, and especially with her Overwatch ability, you can very easily accidentally kill your teammates depending on where the enemies are moving around Peach. If, you know, Peach and a teammate are sharing a piece of cover. And because her healing ability is based off of proximity to teammates to heal them after bouncing off of one, it's, she is a very kind of, she can be a very counterproductive player on the team. That being said, her shotgun can wreck people, absolutely wreck people. She's great for, I think Peach is great for the kind of mid-world challenges, like where you have to, you know, like when you replay a world and they give you these challenges, kill 10 enemies in 2 turns or whatever that kind of stuff is. She's excellent for that kind of stuff because her shotgun does such great area damage and such great close range damage. If you're not worried about surviving 5 turns but only 2 turns, she's fantastic. But for boss fights, I think there's better options. So anyway, thanks for checking out this video. Enjoy the rest of it. I don't really have anything else to say, so I'm just going to stop rambling. I'm not rambling. I had a pretty good idea of what I was saying going into this. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to check out the rest of my Mario and Rabbid Kingdom Battle boss guides and tips and tricks videos that are coming out in the next few days. Thanks for watching, and game on.